Thank you, Marla, and welcome everybody. Today we're looking at the pledge system in Donman, and we've broken into two bits. I'm going to do basically a refresher on pledges and go through the sort of pledges that Donman has, how to create them, the various kinds there are, and how to use them. And then later on, Gary will take over and take you through the auto deduction system and various aspects of that, and how to reverse things and how to make use of that. So first of all, I'll just go through some stuff about pledges. So a definition of a pledge. A pledge is a commitment to make a donation in the future. So a single donation is where somebody gives you some money and that's it. There's no expectation, and if you want more money, you've got to go out to them later on and ask for some more. A pledge, the good thing about a pledge is usually it's a commitment for the future, and it says, okay, I'm going to give you money perhaps on a regular basis. Now, it's not always the case, but the one thing all pledges have in common is the commitment to make a donation in the future. Now, the kind of pledges we have in Donman, we've got ongoing pledges. An ongoing pledge is one that the person signs up for and says, take some money out of my bank account or through a credit card, or just remind me once a month about it, and it's going to be so much a month or a year, and the pledge just keeps going until the person says, no, it's gone. Then we have memberships, which are a special form of pledges, usually annual, but they don't have to be, where there are just some extra aspects of an ongoing pledge, and I'll cover that in a little while. We have fixed pledges, and a fixed pledge is one where there's a fixed number of pledges. So it might be 6 pledges or 4 pledges, or a fixed amount of money, like $5,000 over 5 years. Then we have a special sort of pledge called one-off telemarketing. I use the word telemarketing in brackets because that's generally where one-off are used, but in fact there are other really good uses for that, and I'll cover that in a little while. We have capital appeal pledges that are like the fixed pledge usually, but there's some extra information you can put about capital appeals. And finally we have sponsorship pledges, and I'll talk a little bit about a sponsorship pledge, but today's webinar is not about sponsorship. So first of all, a pledge is usually ongoing in some way and involves more than one payment. But in the case of a one-off pledge, it can be as simple as a promise to make a single donation. So whereas most pledges will involve multiple pledges, a one-off can be just simply something similar to what you do with telemarketing. Ring someone and they say, yes, I'll give you $50. So it's a deferred payment, but it's still only one payment. But it's a pledge because it's a promise to make a future gift. Setting up a pledge campaign. When you set up a new pledge, you have to first go into the campaign setup menu and let the system know that this is a pledge campaign. Now, this is how the donation processing program knows how to treat the donation as a pledge. So you must create the campaign as a pledge campaign. And there are a number of boxes in the pledge in the campaign screen set up which relate to pledges. And I've got a little picture of that here now. And the top section that I've highlighted with the little circle are the bits that relate to pledges. The rest are different. They're about functions, raffles and things. But the first question, is it a pledge campaign? Now, if you say no to that, then it will skip all the other questions. Everything else here is only relevant to a pledge. So if it's a pledge campaign, do you need special pledge receipts? Now, I'm not going to spend any time on that today, but special pledge receipts are only used in a situation where if you're doing both donations and pledges in the one batch, and you want the pledges to go out in a different letterhead. In other words, you want 2 different receipting sequences, and you can do that with special pledge receipts, but it's not very common now. Most people just use the receiving system. And then we have the one-off pledge, the subscription, the membership, and the child sponsorship. So they're all the things that can be part of a pledge, depending on how you set it up. Now, let's look at the first sort of pledge, is the simple ongoing pledge. A promise to pay an amount every month or year, e.g. membership, until the donor cancels. A payroll deduction program might be a pledge of $10 a fortnight, or the membership might be $80 a year. Now let's look at setting up a pledge. So if we've got a donor, and I'm going to set the pledge up using the pledge button on the donor screen. So clicking on that, and I'm going to clear the screen, I'm going to just start to create a simple pledge. So we put the campaign code in, I've got the campaign called test. I'm going to ignore capital appeal, we're not doing that, but I will do that in a minute. an operator code if you have an operator code, the date pledge started. In this case, I'm saying it defaults to today as today's date. The normal instalment amount is how much do they pay every time they pay. So I'll say it's $50 times per year. Now, an ongoing pledge, if it's something like a regular sponsorship of something or other, it might be monthly. So you might say it's 12 times per year. So that would be a $50 a month. Membership is usually once a year, so it would be once. So let's just say 12 times a year. And then the next question is date of next gift. So if we're creating a new pledge, we have to decide when does this pledge come into effect. So if I put T there, which stands for today's date, it'll put today's date. So I'm saying the pledge is due now. So if I run a reminder and say what pledges are due, this pledge will come up. Of course, I can put that in the future if the person has said, look, I do want a pledge, but I don't want it to start till the end of the month. Now, the next section is only true for fixed pledges, so I'm going to ignore what says for fixed pledges, number of instalments pledged, and I just hit enter. I ignore that, and it's also offering me how much is the next gift going to be. Now, that almost always is the same as the normal instalment amount here. The only reason that would be different would be if you had something like a membership and you knew that next year memberships are going up. So you might say, yes, it's $50 now, but it'll be $60 next year. And then a pledge can also be an auto deduction. So you've got all these questions here about whether the pledge is to be taken out of their account automatically, in which case you can enter the direct debit. If it is auto deduction, you can enter whether it's direct debit or credit card. If you say direct debit, it allows you to enter the bank BSB number. If it's a credit card, you'll enter the credit card details. Okay, so that's a simple ongoing pledge. Basically, the only information you really need is the frequency, how many times per year, and what the amount is. Now, going back to my slides, the next sort of pledge is membership. A membership pledge is an ongoing one. And a membership is really the same as a normal ongoing, but it has one additional special feature. When you enter a donation against a membership pledge, the donation processing program will check to see if the donor already has an ongoing membership pledge and will give you the option of updating the old membership campaign to the new one if it's different. Now, the reason we have this in Donman is it avoids accidentally creating multiple membership records. So, for example, if you have the one membership campaign called Member, and that's all, it's simple. You'll never have this problem because you'll always be updating that. But if your organisation decides that you want to closely look at membership and see all the people that have joined in a particular year and have campaigns code like Member 12, Member 13, Member 14, so that each year your membership campaign changes. Now, if you were to pay the pledge payment to a new pledge each time, the danger is you would leave the old pledge looking like it hadn't been paid off. And so what Donman does in the donation processing program is if you enter a membership campaign, a little box pops up and says, this donor already has a membership campaign for record member. Do you want to convert this record to campaign member 2013? So instead of creating two membership pledges, what it will do, it'll leave the donations that the person's made to member exactly as they were, donations to member, but it'll rename the pledge record so that the pledge is now a pledge to member 2013. And presumably in 2014 it'll be updated to member 2014. So the person will always only have one pledge record, but the amounts will go to the various campaigns. So let me look at at a membership pledge. Well, really, we've done that. I don't need to do that. A membership pledge on the pledge screen is exactly the same. It's just that it's usually once a year, and it has this extra feature in donation processing. Now, fixed pledges. A fixed pledge is when we have a commitment for a fixed amount of money for a period of time, e.g. major gifts or capital appeals. This might be $5,000 donation to be paid annually in 5 payments. Donman keeps a record of the number of payments received, and when the number received equals the number promised, the pledge is finished, and the reminder system will not select the pledge for renewal anymore. So let's have a quick look at fixed pledges, and we did look at this. I'm going to just bring up pledge again, and I'm going to enter campaign code test again, but this time I'm going to say it's $50. No, I'm going to say it's $1,000 is the payment once a year, and it starts today. And where it says for fixed pledges, number of installments pledged, and this is really important, Donman doesn't compare the amount given to what's promised. It compares the number pledged to the number received. So that it is possibly amounts might vary, but once you've got the right amount. So if I say there's going to be 5 here, it's going to say that really should be $5,000. And that means the balance due is $5,000 because nothing's been paid. If once I take the first $1,000 from the person, whether it's by automatic deduction or they send it to me, that balance due will be $4,000. Now, if for whatever reason the person alters the amounts, you'll have to adjust the number of installment pledges because that's the important thing. But what will happen is that as each donation comes through, there is an item on the pledge screen which is for the number given. Well, here we have total given and number of gifts received. Now that's 0 now because we haven't done it, we just set the pledge up. As the donations come in and you actually update and this figure here is received, once the magic number 5 appears under number of gifts received, then it knows this pledge is finished. And so when you run the reminder, the next date will be 0 and it will not look for any more amounts of money. And also if you run some reports that show you what the projected income is over the next 5 years, if you run that report for ongoing pledges, then it will assume that the payments will continue for the length of the report date, the reports you put in. If the fixed pledge, as soon as it gets to the fifth one, it won't project any more money because it knows that pledge will have finished then. Okay. Get rid of that. Okay. Now, the next one I want to talk about is the one-off or telemarketing pledge. Now, one-off actually can be very useful even if you're not doing telemarketing, although its most common use is telemarketing. One-off pledge is usually created by setting a campaign up as a pledge and one-off in the campaign setup. And remember from where I showed you the campaign screen, one of the options is it a one-off campaign. When you create a pledge, that's a one-off, a number of items are automatically filled in on the screen and some are skipped. A telemarketing pledge is always a fixed pledge with one promised payment. So that's the idea for telemarketing. I ring someone and they say, yes, I'll give $50. So it's a promise, but it's still like a single donation that will occur. Now let me show you how that works and what will happen when I do a telemarketing pledge. So the campaign is Tele02, and the date pledge started defaults to today. It says it's going to start today. I will enter the instalment amount, which is the $50 that they're promising to give. Now watch what happens as the screen automatically updates. It is automatically put 1 in for the number of times per year. It's automatically made the next date today. It's automatically made the number of installments pledged 1, the total pledged $50, balance due 50. So in other words, this has done all the work for us so that we are now finished, and all we have to do is wait for that $50 to come in, and once the $50 has come in, this pledge is paid off. No further money will come in. So it's not a series of gifts, it's one gift that's going to come in the short-term future. Now I did mention that this can be useful. When I've done, I seem to have locked up my screen. Terrific. Okay, let's just have that again. Terrific. Okay. Go back in there. Okay, one-off. Okay, here's where you can use a one-off when you're not doing telemarketing. Normally, Donman, you can only have one sort of campaign. It either has to be pledge or not pledge. You can't mix the two. So for example, if you're running a major gift or a capital appeal and you had a number of people that were pledging and a number of people who were just going to give a single gift, what you would normally do is create two different campaigns, one for the pledge and one for the non-pledge. If you have, and that's what I'm saying here, however, if almost all of your donations are pledges and you get a couple of single donations, you may not want to create a separate campaign. Now, in the case when you do have two campaigns, you would at least make the group code for the campaign the same. So the group code might be the appeal name so that you can put the two together. But in the case where there are just a couple of individual donations, it may be not worth it to actually create a separate campaign. The problem is that if you've created the campaign as a pledge campaign, you can't put a single donation through. And this is where one-off can come in handy. Without setting it up as a one-off campaign, you can enter the one-off specification. So you can say this is a pledge which is a fixed pledge 1 of 1. And what will happen is that donation that's come through will pay it off. So you've still achieved the result, putting through a single donation by creating a pledge. And there are programs that you can run in Donman later on to get rid of all those sorts of pledges, the ones that are 1 of 1 that are paid off, because all you really need is the donation. You don't need the pledge once it's been done. So that's a really good use for the one-off kind of pledge. Last thing, the second last, or last I'm going to go into any detail, is the capital appeal. Capital appeals are different in that they're usually about going out to people and asking for significant amounts of money. I mean, usually it's on a pyramid, so if you're trying to raise $5 million and maybe that your top gift you want is $500,000, and going down the pyramid you're getting to various amounts, but all of them are significant, and there may be some down the bottom too. But a capital appeal is usually where you have a group of people that are allocated to solicitors to go out and ask them for money. It's a fixed pledge, but it's unique, and the entire pledge may be set up in advance the donor actually making a commitment with a hoped-for gift amount entered and the code of the gift solicitor. So when we start a capital appeal, what we'll do is we'll go to all the people we think are probably going to give the campaign or capable of giving, and the person running the capital appeal will, working with you, decide, yeah, this is John Smith, he should be good for $1,000, or we think this person's good for this amount of money, we're going to ask this person for that. And basically, it's set up so that in advance you've got these hopes and expectations of how you're going to get the money for the appeal. Now, a capital appeal pledge is the same as an ordinary pledge, but there's a section on the capital appeal screen where the extra items can be entered. Now, up till now, I've shown you how to create a pledge from the donor screen. And that's what we did. We went to the donor screen, but there's another way. If you're setting up a capital appeal initially, where you're doing these hope-for pledges where there is no actual pledge amount, just a hope-for gift, you can go in through the pledge system and go to hope-for pledge record. And this is just like the donor screen, like we've seen, but when you go through to the end, I've got a source code in there. Okay. When you go through to the last screen, instead of going to the end, it automatically sets up a pledge record, and it's got their record. So I can now create a pledge here and test pledge, and I'm going to say, I'm going to say edit capital appeal details. That's what I skipped before in all the other ones. But in this case, capital appeal, so I'm going to go into that, and the first option on the screen is hope for gift. So I'm hoping for $1,000 from Jennifer Lawrence. The solicitor who's been approached, who's going to approach her, Andrew's going to approach her. So these are all things you would set up when you set up the capital appeal. The team code, if you give that asker a code, so on code A1, the approach status, it's been allocated. Let's look at some of those codes. These are examples. Allocated, pledge received, promised but have not received the gift, refused, removed, see you later. So you can create these extra codes that you want for those things. Reported date, which is when did we find out about it, and the details. Is the giver themselves a team member? In other words, have I asked somebody in my capital appeal committee to ask somebody else in the capital appeal committee? So once we've entered all that into the system, we have pretty well the standard pledge, the same as we would normally have for a fixed pledge. The difference is that if it's just a hope for gift and there's nothing there, I don't put anything for number, for the amount and what's given, and I simply say with a record. So I now have a hopeful gift for Jennifer. Now, one of the things that there is in the capital appeal system are reports that you can run which contrast the status of gifts and hopeful versus actual. This can be quite interesting because it's how good a guess did you make. You might, if you've got hundreds of pledges in there, and the reality is a far cry from what you hope for. And if that's the case, the appeal may not be successful. A well-run appeal, you'd hope there'd be some sort of correspondence, and that where some people are a bit short, some people may actually have given more. So that's the capital appeal pledge. The last one is sponsorship. I'm not going to go through sponsorship because we've done a webinar on sponsorship and we've covered that, but I just wanted to make the point of the special nature of a sponsorship pledge. The difference the sponsorship pledge is unique, and the ongoing pledge amount may be allocated to specific children and may be split into sponsoring more than one child. So a sponsorship pledge is like a pledge, $20 a month, $50 a month. The difference is, though, that if a pledge is for $100 and 4 children are sponsored, each child will have a payment of $25 recorded against them. So we will still have a pledge of $100, but special records will be created against the pledge. So there will be a donation for $100, but 4 $25 sponsorship payment records will be created against them. And if you do a reversal, it reverses those two. So that's the unique thing about a sponsorship pledge. How do we create pledges? Now, I've divided this up into 2 situations: when we have no current payment, when we have the first payment in hand. So if we have no current payment, that somebody's just responding and telling us they want to make the pledge, we can do it as I've done it, directly from the donor screen, where I just created a pledge and put a future date in. Or I can use the Create Hope for Pledge program from the pledge menu, as I did when I was showing you the capital appeals. Now, if the first payment's in hand, if someone sends us $50 because they filled a form in saying, yes, not only do I want to give $50, I want it to be $50 a month, we would do that from the donation processing screen. So in other words, we would put the $50 donation against the pledge campaign. The donation processing screen would say, oh, there's no pledge record for that one. Do you want to create one? And it would enable you to create the pledge record, and so that when you run the end of day update, the pledge created and the first payment will already have been made. If it's a fixed pledge and it's number 1, then it'll say there's 4 to go. If it's an ongoing, it'll just say this month's gone, and we're now in a position to proceed next month to get the next payment. So that's a bit of a refresher on pledges and the sort of pledges in Donman. What Gary's going to do now is take you through how you actually do the reminders and auto deductions to actually get the money from people for these pledges you've set up, whether it be for annual giving, for capital appeals, or sponsorships. So I'll hand over to Gary now.
Thank you, Andrew, and good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. So as Andrew has said, what we're going to look at now, get back to my start menu here, is what we can then do with the pledges from basic setting up. The most common form of pledge, as Andrew has sort of gone through, would be something like a membership or a one-off pledge where I do reminders to people. I mean, a one-off pledge or an annual pledge where I do reminders to people, or an auto deduction. Yeah. So what we'll look at first is if I've got people that are doing quarterly pledges or annual pledges or membership, is the same sort of thing. And what I want to do is do reminder letters to people. In order to do that, from the start menu, we'd go into the pledges, and on the left-hand side up the top here, you'll see reminder letters. If we click into that menu item, the very first item on that menu says create selection/merge file. So this is where I can create either a selection file, a merge file, or both in order to update the system. If we go into there, the system will come up saying, am I creating a merge file, selection file, or both? If I say B for both, it'll then prompt me for a name for a selection file. In this case, I'll just call it reminder. And by default, the system puts a file name for the text file as reminder.txt. If you want to call it something else, you can certainly call it something else. It really wouldn't matter. Okay. In this case, the file is already existing, so the system's now prompting me to say, do you want to override it? So I'd say yes. Just like most of the other merge files that we have coming out of Donman, you get the option to do formatted name and address or separate fields. Formatted is normally what you'd see on the receipt, where you have address 1 to 6 or 1 to 8, where the system will put them into an address block basically, or you can have the separate fields. It's totally up to you. Separate fields sometimes a little bit more flexible depending on what you want to do with the data later, but if you're doing it for a straight merge, then normally the formatted fields are much easier because you've got a whole lot less fields to put into your merged document. From there, I then get the option to say, do I want to select particular pledges by campaign code? If I said yes, then I get the option to go through and say, I'm looking for whatever my campaign might be. So, where I've got pursuit pledges, I've got one-off, I've got sponsorships, etc. So I can choose that particular pledge campaign to do my letters for. Something like that. If I had another one, I could go through. The only time I'd normally do that is if I had membership. I'd say, yes, I've got a special bit of text that I'm writing to members to say, your membership is now due, and have all the details on there. So I would choose that particular campaign, because obviously I don't want to pick up people that are doing sponsorships when I'm doing a membership reminder, and vice versa. Okay. By default, there the system will then come up and say, do you want to exclude the donors with the current no mail until date? Which means I've got a record that normally does get mailing, but they've already been in contact with the organisation to say, look, I'm going to be away for an extended period, and on the donor's record we've put a no mail until date, so the system will exclude them. And again, if you say, no, I want to write to them anyway, you can certainly just override that field. Okay? By default, it's normally on yes. Okay. Do I want to select by donor mail code? In this particular case, if I was choosing for a particular campaign, I'd say, no, I don't really care about what their mail code is, because that's more to do with my appeals or other things as I go through. From there, I then choose the date range that I'm doing, for the reminder letters. So if I had people that were doing annual payments for membership, and on the date people join, their renewal comes out 12 months after that, then I do it for the month coming up. So now we're at the end of October, so I'd go from the 1st of November till the end of November this year to say they're the people I need to do the reminder letters for. If perchance we've got membership where everyone renews on, say, the 1st of September, then when I run it, I just have to say from the 1st of September till the 1st of September, choosing that particular campaign, and that should pull up everybody. If perchance I've got dates in there that are a bit iffy, then put in a date range, not one particular date, because you might miss some people because there's been a bit of a problem with the data entry. Okay, so from there it's saying, do you want to exclude any pledge record where a donor has made a gift to this campaign after a certain date? Normally in the case of a straight reminder, I would never have to worry about this because I'd be choosing people for that campaign, and if they had made a payment, their date would be beyond the date range that I'm selecting here. But on the norm, it would be very rare that I have to worry about putting something in there. Okay. On the pledge record that Andrew was going through before, one of the fields down the very bottom of the pledge says reminder required, yes or no. Okay. If I had somebody who said, look, I'm going to do a one-off membership or a quarterly pledge or something, but you don't need to send me a reminder letter because I'll take care of that and I'll make the payment, then on their pledge record we could say, no, they don't require a reminder letter. Yeah. So that's where this question comes in, saying only include those people that are marked yes. And by default, if the record is marked as an auto deduction, normally those people don't need to have a reminder letter. So by default, the system will exclude people that have got a pledge record set up, is marked auto deduction yes. Okay. For most of the reminders that we're doing, what I've done on this screen here should cover everything for my particular reminder. But when we enter, we'll get to another screen with questions where we're talking about different things, where Andrew was saying before that we had people that had fixed pledges, or we had things that there is going to be a finite number of donations or dollar value of the gift. So this is where the first question comes into play, which says only include those who have fixed pledge who will expire in the period. Yeah. So this is where I can say, yes, I want to write to those people whose pledges are about to be paid up, and I want to do a special letter for them. Yeah. The same sort of thing where I've got my hope for gifts, then I can put between dollar and dollar to say these are the people that I want to do letters to based on the dollar amount that I put in for their hope for gifts. So I've just got, my board team or my lead team or whatever I've called my team of people to go out and solicit people to say, look, we're trying to raise some capital funds, and, from that we can put into each person's record how much we think they're, possibly going to give us, or what we're hoping that they're going to give us. Okay. I then also get an option to use the initial instead of the first name in the address. And again, whether that's yes or no is up to you. Okay. I have got the option here to output in donor number order or alpha order. Most of the merge files we do will come out in postcode order because I'm doing it to do a mailing or something like that, and having it in postcode order is fairly paramount to getting a discount on the mailing. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to leave it on alpha order, so it's going to be there. If I wanted to do a list of people that had signed up for a pledge between certain dates, then this is where I could skip the dates on the first screen, and I'd say I'm just looking for people who started a pledge between date 1 and date 2. If I just enter, as it says on the right-hand side here, this will be basically for every pledge record on and not caring. The same sort of thing, if I wanted people with particular installment amounts between dollar and dollar, then I could put those in. In this case, I'm saying, no, I'm not really worried about when they started or how much they're giving. The alternate salutation, again, from the donor's record, I've got an option to choose that. And do I want to output notes? If I do say yes to notes, the system, when I create the data file, will also output the notes into merge file that I can use as part of my letters. Okay. Not normal that you do that because there could be all sorts of things in notes itself. Okay. If I'm using a second address, because I might have people that have a main record where I've got Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but on the membership, maybe only one person pays membership, so I might then have a second address which has just got the member details on. If I was doing that, then certainly at this point I'd say, yes, I do want to use a second address. And then from there I could choose the address that I wanted to pull out. So as I was saying, if I had a membership one in here, then I'd certainly say, yes, that's the one I want to choose for doing this particular mailing. So for mine, I'm saying, no, it doesn't really matter. Whatever's on the donor's main screen is the one that I want to do. Output a donor number with a check digit appended. You'll see this one on this particular program, but also when you create a merge data file. Normally you'd say no unless you were doing something where people could make their payment by using pay. So you've coordinated something with the bank or something like that, and exactly the same sort of mechanism here where it's got output Australia Post, bill pay, barcode items, etc. Okay, so for most records where we're just doing a straight out reminder ourselves, I'd say, no, I'm not worried about appending your check digits. I'm not worried about the Australia Post bill pay details. Okay. If I've got a document already set up, then down the bottom I can say load word merge. It'll bring up reminder document. As I go through, it'll then select all the people that are due for a reminder, open my document, and I can then do the merge to say, your membership or your pledge payment, and I can put all the details in the letter from the pledge itself. So I can put in the amount that's next due, the date that's next due. In the case of capital appeals, I can also put things like the balance due, how many payments they've made. So really, you can customize it down to whatever you want as far as the letters go. In this case, because I don't really need to do the merge itself, because I think everyone's hopefully fairly okay with doing a standard sort of merge out of Donman. Yeah, so if I escape out of there, so the next part that we're really looking forward to is that when I have people and I've set up the pledges, one of the main things that I'll be using, especially with my auto deductions, would be how to run a batch of auto deduction pledges. So in order to do that, again, I start from the Start menu, go into Donation Processing, and on the left-hand side here I've got Auto Deduct. The very first item on that menu is the one that will allow me to create a batch of all of the donations that are marked, yes, they're an auto deduct, that where the credit card hasn't expired and the date is due or past due. When I run the program, it's basically telling me up the top what I've just told you, that it creates a batch of new donation records for pledge donors who've asked for automatic deductions by credit card, okay, or in this case it could also be for direct debit. So from there it says, do I want to choose particular campaigns? So unless, again, you had some reporting mechanism that you could say, no, I don't care about which campaign it is. I want to pick up everyone who is an auto deduction. Where most organisations seem to draw the line, though, is I do want a different report if it is a credit card payment or if it is a direct debit straight out of the person's bank account, so that the paperwork that comes out as part of my batch listing will show here's all the credit cards that are going to go through today, and here's all the direct debits. So I haven't got them all intermingled, because it makes it a little bit hard for you to go through and pull them out later. In this case, I'm going to say I'm going to do a credit card batch. Normally with the auto deduction pledges, I'd say what I don't want to do really is send these people a receipt for every payment that they make. There is a question on the pledge record itself that's got receipt yes or no, which means you may have somebody who says, look, I'm going to give you money every month, but I do want a receipt every month. So if that was the case, I'd answer yes to this question, and the only people who will be receipted for this particular batch would be people that I've marked, yes, they have indicated that they do want a receipt for every particular payment. Okay. If you said no, even if someone's marked that wrong, I don't care. We're going to receipt these people at the end of the financial year. Then I just leave that on one on no and say, no, I don't want to receipt anyone for this particular batch. Okay. From there, do I want to bank the credit card details? Obviously, yes, I do want to bank them. The next one down is one we have to be very careful that we say, yes, I do want to exclude the pledges with expired credit cards. If they noted that, the system will pick them up just like normal, but when it gets to the bank's going to reject them anyway. So it seems to defeat the purpose of doing this whole mechanism to send stuff that you know is going to bounce back to you. From there, if I'm doing Amex or Diners, because they have slightly different mechanisms and there's a bit more of a lag for getting your payment through, you might say, look, I want to run this, but I want to exclude those, or you might not do Amex. And if someone's put one through, you just want to say, no, exclude those. Okay. If you say include, you've then got the option to say, do I want to bank those, yes or no? And so in this case, I'm saying, look, I don't care if it's Amex or Diners. Yes, I've got merchant facilities to take both of those card types as well as the MasterCard and Visa, so I'm going to include them, and yes, they are going to become part of my banking. By default, the system will put today's date as the date to test to see if the pledge is due. Depending on yourselves, obviously, as an organization and what decisions are made, but normally people would do the auto deduction somewhere in the middle of the month, because if you do it at the beginning of the month and the end of the month is where traditionally most of our public holidays happen. There's not many that happen sort of smack bang in the middle of a month. But the date itself is not that important as long as we know when people are due. If I have put the date in, and the system will then say, what if I want to pick up any pledge that's due? So if I was running this, say, on the 15th of the month, when I had people that were due up to the end of the month, I've still got an option here to say, yes, process those as part of this run anyway. Yeah. For most organizations, I think it's normally the other way around, rather than saying, look, no, I don't want to pick those people up till next month because they're not really due yet. Okay. From there, I have an option because some people do the auto deduction through Donman, and then when they print out the report, they use the report that comes out to show the full credit card number, which they then put through an FPOS machine before we finish the cycle off. In this case, I'm saying, no, I don't need to, because I'm going to send the money to the bank a different way. Okay. If it's a gateway transaction, so when we've set up the pledges, as you saw, you can put in credit cards, but if you've got gateway, so you're using Secure Pay or eWay, what will happen at the time you create the pledge, the system will then send the credit card details and the expiry date to the gateway, and they will return a token. So you'll no longer actually have the credit card number on your system at all, and every time you look at it or do a report, it'll come out showing that this one has got a token. It actually hasn't got the credit card number anymore. Okay. There is the option here, though, to say, look, if it's a gateway transaction, I've also got the option to say, look, the card was rejected this month, but I don't want the month or the date of next payment to fall backwards, so I do want to set the date forward. And again, that's totally up to you whether you do that or not. Okay. If I've got a donation type or a coupon code, depending on those, then I can say, yes, I'm going to put these through, just as donations. By default, the system's put my operator code. At the bottom of the screen now, I've got, say, do I want to run this as a live run, okay, or no, or do I want to do a trial? So if I just wanted to get an idea of what pledges are going to come up before I do the live run, then I'd say, look, all I want to do here is a test run. So it's just T for trial and enter, and the system will go through all the motions, but it won't actually create the new donation records. But I will get all the paperwork, so I can check that and say, yes, that's exactly what I thought, and then I could do a live run. If I was quite happy and said, no, look, we do this every month and we're pretty up to date and our data's nice and clean, then I'd say, yes, I want to run this as a real batch. When I go through, the system then shows me, okay, that was lovely, didn't pick up anybody. Okay, so if I save my report, okay, so you can see in this case, it's just printing a blank report because they say, well, nobody met the criteria that I put through for my batch. So if there's a problem, you will get that sort of thing. When I do the auto deduction report, okay, by default, just like the banking and the names text file and the ledger report and everything, the system by default will create the printout of the report. So you can see I've got auto dead, which is today's report, which has basically got nothing in it. So I'm saying, oh, okay, I'd have to go back and actually look at the pledges to find out why that didn't happen. If I go and have a look at one that I actually ran earlier this morning, this is normally what would come up, where I'm showing the donor number, the name or the organization name, the date that they were due, the campaign the person's using, so whether it be in this case an auto deduction or a sponsorship, the card type, the card number, and the expiry date on the report. If there was any that had an expired card, and in this case you can see here I've got a couple here that will actually due in March, okay, and I've got some that are all due, looking at the expiry dates of the cards. So I've got a whole lot here, but I've got one here that, because when I did this run, was picked up because I didn't say, no, exclude this one because it has an expired card. That's why ideally I should say, when I do the report, say, no, I don't want to include the expired cards. They will still come up on the report, but you'll get a heading before the actual donor that says this one was excluded because of, the card being expired. At the bottom of the page in that case, and we get there, okay, I would then have an item that showed me how much was picked up for this auto deduction run and how much was missed because the credit cards were expired. So in this case, if I've got records to say, oh, hang on, why didn't they get picked up? When I know that there's a good chance they should have. So the first thing I'd need to do is go back to donor entry, look at one of my donors who's got the pledge, and I'll say, well, yes, they're marked auto deduct. Okay, their date and next gift is, in this case, that one's in the future. And I can see down the bottom here, there's a flag that the system's already updated to say, this one's already been picked up as an auto deduction today, which is why it hasn't been picked up twice. Okay, so it's got auto deduction done. So as soon as you run the auto deduction batch, the system will update this field automatically to say I've picked that one up today. So even if I run the auto deduction, like I've just done the second time on the same day, it's not double up on the person's amount, because obviously that's going to cause huge headaches for everybody involved. If I have a person that for one reason or another misses a payment, when I do the next successful payment, the date of next gift doesn't necessarily jump, 2 months or 3 months, because looking at how many times per year that person is due, the system by default will say this one's due 12 times a year. So when you process a successful payment, it can only roll it up by one period. Okay? So that's something that, as far as managing the pledges, we need to keep on top of. If somebody hasn't paid for 3 months or 4 months, whatever's happened, their card's expired, we haven't been able to get hold of them. When we actually do get hold of them, we need to come in, update the credit card details, but we also need to change the date of next gift to be the date that actually is going to be picked up in the next run. So if by chance, this person paid in June, and as such, their date there would have been the 15th of the 7th, then ideally I'd want to change that to be the 15th of November like it's showing here at the moment, to say, well, that's what's happened, this one needs to be changed up so that when I look at it, I don't say, hang on, there's something wrong, their date of next gift is way old, because if I look at the donor's history, I'll see that there's payments that have been missed. So that's something that does come up quite often where people say, oh, hang on, I'm looking at the date of next gift, and it just doesn't gel with anything else. And normally it's related to the date that they last paid. Okay? But sometimes if this one was successful, I then have to say, well, the date last paid was the 30th of October, but their date here might still be the 15th of July or something like that. So it's not something the system is doing wrong. It's really just the way it's designed to work, because it can't, say, well, this person missed 3 payments, unless automatically update the date the next gift to be, the month coming up, not where it was originally. So in this case, this is why my pledges weren't picked up, because this one's already marked to say yes, it's been done automatically. So in this particular case, because I was playing with this morning and I've mucked it up, what I need to do is set all those pledges to say no, they haven't been done, so that I can then go through and do the run. Okay, so normally you won't have to do this, but when you're playing with the data like I've been, then sometimes I just need to do something out of the ordinary. Okay, so I'm sure lots of people have seen this program when we've had particular errors in the data, or something that we said, look, we want to change something because we've had some error happen and the data's already ticked over, but nothing's actually happened. So if I say for this one, I'm going to change the pledge records, I'm going to change the auto done field, and I'm going to change it from yes to no. Okay. So in this particular case, you can see I'm forcing the system to go backwards. Okay. And it's showing me how many records have changed. So if I now go back, so okay, now I want to do my auto deduction again, create auto deduction batch. So now I'm not worried about particular campaigns. Again, I'm doing credit cards. Okay, so most of the settings that I used last time will be stored. So for most things, unless somebody's changed one of these settings, just enter through. Sometimes that will trick us because someone's gone through and said, oh, don't bank the credit card donations, and next time you run it, you go, oh, hang on, why didn't they come out? Because somewhere along the line, change my date here. Okay, so I'm saying yes, I want to pick them up. Okay, so you can now see that out of my 135 pages, the system's picked up 93. If I just save my report, yes. Okay, so you can see now what I was saying before, that I've got a donor, that one payment has gone through, but the next amount for $60 hasn't gone through because they were using a different credit card for that particular one, and the credit card has expired. Okay, so at the bottom of my report will then show me that there was $220 missed out of this particular batch because of expired credit cards. So obviously we don't want to have that happen all the time, and one of the options that we've got in order to manage that a whole lot better is on the same auto deduct menu, you've got to print lapsed credit card report. Okay. So when I run it, I've got two options. I can put in a particular date. So if I just said 01/11/13, that any card that's going to expire by that particular date, I want to have them picked up. Or I can just run it and put in a month and a year. So if I said, look, I want anyone who's due between this month and that month. So if I was doing for the next month coming up, all the cards that are due, and go backwards. I wouldn't put a date there, no, so I'm looking for everyone who's due between the 11/13 and 11/13. Okay, so I can do it for a particular month, but if I, really wasn't on top of this initially, I just put in a date, and the system will then give me a text file of all the people whose credit card, has expired, basically. From there, I get an option to say, do I want to output the file and load and merge it? So yes, and by default, the system creates the file called lapsed card or lapsed credit card, basically text file. If I've got my credit card letter already set up, then I can say yes, load, word, and merge. Again, I'm not worried about second addresses. So you can see at the top here, I've got an address block. I've got the date, the citation, the campaign the person's giving to, the next date they due, next amount, what card type they've been using, the card number, just like we saw on the report, doesn't come out as the full number. It comes out basically with the first 4 digits, a whole lot of asterisks, and the last 4, okay, and the expiry date. I've done too good a job on mine. I've got nobody who's lapsed. Okay, and it told me on the message there to saying there were no cards that were lapsed. If there were, the 2 things that I will get is a report saying here's all the people showing, you know, their card details and the date that they're expired. So I'll get the printed report, but I'll also get this lapsed card text file that I can use to do a merge for those. Yeah. So just like most of the other merge documents in Donman, once I set that up, I basically just tell this letter that it's always using this text file, so I don't have to regenerate the thing from scratch, you know, every single time. So that's how we can sort of keep on top of the auto deduction coming out with a whole lot of people that have, you know, got expired cards, because I don't want a whole report showing me that I've missed, you know, $200, $300, or any dollars at all if I maintain that. It's a matter of keeping in touch with the donors, really. Once we've successfully completed this stage, I then go back to housekeeping, back to donation processing, and in this state, Donman has basically, created a batch of the donations for me. And so you can see down the bottom of the screen it's saying there's no 99 donations in the temporary file. So if I have other banking to do, I can now just go in and create a new batch. The only difference between doing the auto deduction for credit cards and the direct debits is that if I do direct debits, then I'd also have to create a disk for the bank, which basically creates a ABA file, which is a fairly standard format that all the banks use for direct deposits, direct debits from bank accounts. Okay, so there's very few banks that you'll find a problem with that format because it's been around for years and it really hasn't changed. But that's the only difference that you'll find between doing the credit card ones and doing the direct debits is you create the disk for bank. Other than that, if it's straight credit cards, it will just become part of your normal merge file. So in the case here, if I'm doing the banking credit listings and I'm doing card fast as the way to get the credit cards, then I'd run this program here to create the actual credit card file to upload to the bank. So you might be using Westpac or CBA or any of those. The mechanism's exactly the same. If perchance I discovered that, look, I've got a major error here, and I have gone through and said, okay, look, I've recorded the donations, I've got the report, but there's something wrong, I need to roll all those pledges backwards. Again, if I go back to auto deduct, you may or may not have this particular program on your menu. If you haven't, you can certainly contact us and we can put that on. But I've got an option here that says now undo the auto deduction batch. So what this program does is it will set the system progress back to donations if it's not. Okay? And it says, do you want to delete today all of today's auto debits? Put your initials in and go through. So what it will do is the 2 things, it will roll the pledge backwards so that the dates are all back to where they were, and it will also delete the new donation records. If perchance you just open the batch manually and delete a donation because you're saying, well, this one didn't go through because I put them through FBOS or something, then you'll end up with the same sort of thing where the system will, by default, roll those dates backwards on the pledge. So you don't have to worry about it too much if you do it that way. But if I'm clearing the whole batch, I need to run this particular program to do it. Okay, so hopefully that gives everyone a little bit of a better idea on, you know, doing the auto deductions and things that we can do from the pledges. And I'll hand back to Andrew and we'll have a bit of a question and answer time.
Thanks, Gary. I was just going to add that if people are using Gateway, then there's no need to run the credit card programs because the auto deduction for credit cards will automatically be deducted from their account using the Gateway, and it's done.
Yep.
Okay, we'll open the floor for any questions. We've got a couple of minutes before we have to finish off. So if anyone does have any questions, you can log them on the question pane in that control panel. So you just click on the little orange grab tab arrow on the right-hand side of your screen, and you'll see a question pane there that you can pop in a question. So the first question was from Melanie, and pardon me if I read this incorrectly, but she says, how do you run a report for pledge donors who has a next of date different from others?
Normally, if I had to do a report like that, I'd have to do it through the. I can either do it as the reminder letter, because remember that'll come out as part of the file. I can have those, but if I've got, say everyone who's due on the 15th, and I'm looking for something different, it'll probably be much easier to do it through the reports menu, through the visual report writer, where I can look at the pledges and look at the expiry date. So if I had pledges my data file, and I could say even next date. Okay, so I could do greater than, so if I'm due on the 15th, I could say I'm looking for everyone whose next date, is not equal, the 15th of the month basically, and pull a list of those so that I can sort of go into those people's pledges and fix them up so that everyone is aligned.
Okay, thanks. Okay, next question was from Adrian, and she just wanted to know if you could quickly go over where the expired cards bit was. I missed that bit.
So, well, if you go into donation processing, back into auto deduct, you should have a lapsed credit card report on that menu, and so that's the one that you run. That will give you two things. It'll give you the printed report, but also give you the option to create that text file that you can do the merge with for those people.
Okay. One more question. Adrian says thank you. When you want to update one campaign code to another campaign code, how does this work? It appears that you had a pop-up that said change from MEM to member or something, but we don't usually see this in Office, is what they're saying.
No, that's only if it's a membership campaign, and only if you try and create a second membership campaign for the same donor. That's in the donation processing program. It'll always do that. It'll warn you and say this person's already got a membership pledge. This is trying to avoid you, because usually a person only has one membership. I mean, it's not impossible. If you, for example, had two different sorts of memberships, you might have the Club of 1,000 and the Special Club, and somebody could be a member of both, in which case you'd say, yes, I do want to create a second pledge. But if you try and create a second pledge, it will come back to you and say that. I'll show you the little screen that I showed that on. This is the donation processing screen. So you can see under there is where you enter the donation amount.
Just Andrew, I just need to hand over the presenting screen to you.
I apologise, yes. This is the slide that I was using before, and it's a picture of the donation processing screen. So that's where the amount, the campaign, relative ledger code, etc. is. Now, in this case, I've got someone that's already got a membership campaign, a membership pledge called Member, and I've attempted to create a new pledge called Member 2013. And in that case, the donation processing program pops it up and says, hey, this person's already got a pledge membership for Member. Do you want to convert it? And the reason we converted it is so the person doesn't end up with multiple pledges for the same campaign. But this is only when you want to change the name of your membership campaign each year. I mean, I don't advise that. I certainly prefer it a lot simpler. You just have one membership campaign called Member. But some organisations that are very membership-based do want to create different campaigns for each year for membership.
Okay, thanks, Andrew. Unfortunately, we have run out of time for any further questions, but if you did have a question that we haven't answered, we'll leave the webcast open for a minute or so you can log those calls and we can follow them up offline later today. So we'll conclude the webcast there. Thank you, Gary and Andrew, for today's very informative webcast. Our next webcast is scheduled for Wednesday the 20th of November at 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So those of you that don't know, we do run these webcasts monthly, and we do record them. So if your colleagues missed today's webcast, it will be on our website in the next week or so. So look in your inbox for further details about our next webcast and also the recording of today's webcast. And of course, you can find our previous webcast on our website at donman.net.au, and it's under the What's New item. So thank you again for joining us, and apologies we couldn't get through all our questions. But we do look forward to seeing you next time, and we will follow up offline for those questions. So that concludes our
Thanks
webcast
everybody.
today.
Thanks, Marla.
Thanks for joining us. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.